Next to speak would be the Member of Parliament of the House, Derek Obrien. And before you speak, I would like to congratulate for your party's stupendous victory today. It's a clean sweep. I think you have to unmute.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir, please.
Good morning, Professor John Gerring, and to the rest of you, including my friend PTR, good evening. And I'm not sure where Dr. Nikita Sood is, so what do I say? Perhaps good afternoon.
So Nikita has not yet joined, so she has some emergency. But she is based out of Oxford, so it's afternoon for her.
Mr. Moderator, I don't know how you want to handle this. I'm good with questions. So I may speak a few minutes and then take some questions, because as I informed you, I have to be somewhere else at 6:45. So I can go for a short while, and then if there are any questions. So, you know what, my friend, the finance minister of Tamil Nadu just said, and coming from the background that he comes from, he put a lot of things in the financial space into perspective. So that I think I haven't prepared any speech or some notes. So what I'll try and do is make it political, but not rhetorical, and just empty rhetoric. So it's going to be political, but not rhetoric. So, Mr. Moderator, we must, and I'm not, I'm not pulling you up. I'm just suggesting to you that my friends in the DMK in Tamil Nadu, Mr. Stalin and his party, came up with a wonderful suggestion, and it's often we feed off each other's suggestions. And I think that's, and I must fix this first with our moderator. Don't take it seriously, take it lightheartedly. That DMK is the first political party in India which has stopped using the word center or central government as opposed to state government. The DMK, and I'm following the DMK example, so we will not use that word, CENTRE. We must all start referring to it as the union government. So it's the union government and it's the state government. Because once you use a word like CENTRE, that kind of evokes a perception that they are, in fact, the CENTRE of the wheel or the CENTRE of attraction. So please, for all of you on this webcast, let's follow the DMK example and use the term union government. 1. 2. What is happening today to federalism? Sitting in parliament, I mean, I don't know what to do, because these guys have messed up every institution there is in India. And I'm sorry, there's a professor sitting there from Texas who has to listen to a senator from India mourn the death of, well, if not the death, certainly India moving close to an elected autocracy. This is what is happening. 98 of the bills which were passed in parliament, 98 bills passed. We did some research on this. 29 of those bills are anti-federal. And can you imagine, where are these bills being passed? In the lower house, the Lok Sabha, in the upper house, which is what? The Council of States. It's back to the civics book in class 5. First article of the Indian Constitution. India, that is Bharat. India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. And the only reason today India, that is Bharat, is still a union of states is because there are parties like the DMK in Tamil Nadu, the left in Kerala, the TMC in Bengal, the Shiv Sena in Maharashtra, who are still fighting to keep India as a union of states. I mean, we're very, very clear on this. These are the 4 or 5 states and the 4 or 5 political parties. And this is where the Congress too has a role to play. I mean, can you imagine, out of 98 bills passed, 29 attacked the federal structure? I want to give you a couple of examples because, as I said, BTR made it a lot easier because he got into numbers and there are so many numbers and it really set the tone. But let's take a simple thing like the Indian Railways. From the time the first parliament sat in the 1950s, all railway projects were paid by the central government. All, 100%. Sneakily, this government has removed the railway budget. It doesn't exist anymore. And guess what? Now there are SPVs between state governments and the central government. So if the state of Maharashtra wants a special project, the state and the central and the union government, I made the mistake again by saying central, the state and the union government have to share the cost. This has been slipped in Parliament. Let me give you the second example because the first one I gave you was railways. The second example. When this government came to power in 2014, there were 66 centrally sponsored schemes. When I say centrally sponsored schemes, in 100% centrally sponsored to the states. From 66 centrally sponsored schemes, this government has brought it down to 28, mocking federalism. Now, for centrally sponsored schemes, what would happen? 75% was paid by the union government, 25% was paid by the state government. The percentages have come down to 50-50, to 60-40. I don't want to repeat the point about cess. So besides railways, besides finance, there are some basic issues on democracy. Basic issues. You know, let's say if you want to hassle your, not even hassle, that's a very light word, harass, intimidate your political opponent. What do? Very simple. I always say the BJP has the best allies. Their usual political allies, there are none. But they've got the Central Bureau of Investigation, they've got the Enforcement Directorate. So what do? Let me just say, Mr. Dharnaradharan, Mr. Did I pronounce your name correctly?
Dharnidharan.
Dharnidharan, okay. Imagine if you're an opposition MP, like I am, and I want to fix you. Now, I can't fix you because you live in Chennai, and your law and order will become a state subject, so it's under the state, DMK rule state. So what do? I get you involved in a case, say in the railways, say next to a port. Now, if I get you involved in the railway yard and accuse you of doing something in the railway yard, you had it, because then that will come under the central government, and I'll put a CBI, Central Bureau of Investigation case on you. So this is the reality. I can go on and on and on and tell you, you know, whether it's COVID, The man stands in parliament. Professor, I hope I'm not sounding very cynical about things in India. But I'm an optimist. But let me share with the professor and all of you. I mean, what is happening? Demonetization was announced at 8 p.m. prime time. Nobody knew. Cabinet ministers didn't know. It was my leader, Mamta Banerjee, the Chief Minister of West Bengal, who tweeted within, doesn't have an economics degree from Princeton or Harvard, but she tweeted in 1 hour and 50 minutes saying, withdraw this draconian decision. That was one example. What federalism? Who was consulted? Nobody. Almost a 1 month lockdown. 1 month lockdown announced at 4 hours notice. 21-day lockdown at 4 hours notice. So there are so many examples. I'll take some questions. I mean, I don't mind, the small things I won't raise, that you get a vaccination in India, you get the Prime Minister's photograph on your certificate. On the COVID certificate, you have the Prime Minister's photograph. So I think the bigger issue is India, that is Bharat, is a council of states. And there's no use talking about what happened yesterday, what happened day before yesterday. We have to, and I say when we means I don't mean any political party, it's match on these two gentlemen. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Prime Minister, and I have a lot of respect for Mr. Home Minister as the minister. But I have no respect for the man Modi and the man Shah. Because over the last 7 years, they made promises. And I think PTR made a good point. These are children of federalism. Modi was Chief Minister of Gujarat, children of federalism. So that's the most surprising thing. Yes, Mr. Moderator, a couple of questions.
Oh, yes. So Mr. Adil Hussain, who's also in the panel, has a question. He's raising his hands. So
yeah.
First of all, thanks to everyone, and moderator, sorry, I have not worked for the party. So I come from a small village in Uttar Dinajpur. My thesis was on Gujarat under Nikita Sood, who's not unfortunately here. Basically, right now, because of this central government BSF rule, we know that 50 kilometers of state, basically my entire district. I'm from a small place called Chakulia near. Recently, we saw BSF declaring 144 along. I'm an anthropologist. I'm not political scientist here. So I mainly work with communities there, and mainly I'm working with the CA and NRC in that North Bengal right now. And I have found right now that very little consideration is done whether when the rice cutting will happen. And there is like immediate, they declare section 144. Right now, the Passport Act comes under the BSF. Then all the CRPC is happening. So basically, my question is this, regarding this 50-kilometer rule, I know what TMC leader Mamta Banerjee has said already, but how you are going to challenge this particular order? Because Channi Sahab has declared, and now TMC has to take a stand because Malda, Murshidabad, I know that after the election, when it was done in the BJP.
Let me jump in. Just to give everyone as to what Mr. Hussain raised. Basic question is that, basic point he was making is that about 1/3 of the border of Bengal has one of the largest borders with other countries. So while 1/3 of the border now is going to be patrolled by the Border Security Force. This notification, which was issued on the 11th of October, needs to be ratified by Parliament. So, Mr. Hussain, here's my response. So, what can we do, or the DMK, or the Congress, and all the opposition parties put together? So, as per the rules, this executive order has to be ratified by Parliament. I think it's 139. Clause 139 suggests that you have to ratify this. So, to answer your question, what do? We'll raise it in Parliament. When Parliament begins 3 weeks from now, we will get together, all of us, and raise it. It will be bulldozed in the lower house because the numbers are in favor of the BJP. In the Rajya Sabha, where the numbers are closer, anything is possible. In the same way, the farm laws were bulldozed. So as a responsible opposition, if you're not going to allow us to speak, Pegasus, the scam, the spyware scam, the spyware snooping, Snoopgate, what happened? An entire session of Parliament got washed out. In the monsoon session, 27 or 28-day session washed out. Why? Opposition wanted to discuss, and by opposition I mean the federal opposition. The federal opposition wanted to discuss this. The government said, out you go, no discussion. Supreme Court jumps in and says, hey, we want a Supreme Court monitored Judicial Commission of Inquiry. So we can only do what we can. And if you don't listen, then what do you do as an opposition? What do we do? People have jumped into the well of the house. Now MPs are jumping on tables. You have to. Today, the folks who've invited me here have given me a chance to express myself. You haven't switched off my video. You haven't switched off my microphone. I have the freedom to say what I want. I don't have this in Indian Parliament. And I'm sitting there in the first row of Parliament for the second largest opposition party with 35 MPs. On my left, next seat is former Prime Minister Deve Gowda. On my right, next seat is former Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. And sometimes I feel, hey, I can't do anything. That's the situation, Mr. Hussain. But for the BSF issue, the Border Security Force, we are tinkering around with borders of this country and we will raise it in Parliament. Okay, can I take one more question and then say bye-bye? Professor, I'm looking forward to hearing what you say, Professor, and learning from what you say, but I will catch that on the webcast. Yeah.
So I think there are two people that want, so is it possible we take two questions?
Yeah. You've taken? Yeah.
Yeah, so the first to go would be Mr. Pugal Gandhi, who's also my colleague in DPF.
Thank you, sir. Of course, DMK is a champion for fighting for federal rights, even from the days of Congress. But the DMK's fight, when we see, it's more with Congress, in fact. Whether it is former Chief Minister Anna Durai or our former Chief Minister Karunanidhi, or maybe our former Minister Mursali Maran, they're all the champions of state autonomy and state rights. And all these things happened even during Congress time period, even the Constitution, because the Constitution paves way for this erosion of state rights. If we see the list which is given in the Constitution, which is the state list, concurrent list, and union list, where in concurrent list, the predominance is with the union government. And Article 248 very clearly says the residual powers where the residual powers rest with the union. That is the clear case where the federal structure gets eroded. Secondly, these institutions like CBI or NIA, even were instituted in the period of Congress, then why blame Modi alone? Is it just because Modi is in power? I'm just playing the devil's role. Is it just because Modi and Amit Shah are in power? Hence, it is a natural resistance for the ruling position. Or is there any serious thing? Because for the last 50 years, even institutions are compromised in the Congress period also. Emergency is a case in point. So why this sudden, so I'm not saying sudden, but the serious issue with respect to the BJP government?
Just a second, we'll also take the question from Mr. Reyes Panisalam. Sir, please, you could...
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So
Yeah.
please quickly go ahead with your question.
My question is a simple one. It is about Article 42nd Amendment, which took away so much of our rights. But when Article 40, Amendment 42nd was corrected in 77, we restored the rights of the citizens, but we did not restore the rights of the states. When the education was shifted from state list to concurrent list, that was not reversed. Forest was not reversed. For what we witness in the 44th Amendment is that we did not revert the powers of the state. We only reverted some powers of the citizens, which was taken away during the emergency. How do we look at the inadequateness of the 44th Amendment? And what is that the political parties are going to do to see that the rights taken away by the 42nd Amendment are brought back to the states?
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. I mean, I'll answer it simplistically almost, and then I'll go to the first question, which was a hardcore political question. So here it's, I mean, you know, as I said, I have to go back to the only book I know, which is the Constitution, which is clearly saying that India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. So when the numbers change in Parliament, and I'm sure the numbers at some point will change in Parliament, this needs to be addressed. When the DMK is next running the government at the center, and I dare say with the TMC and the Shiv Sena and the Congress and everyone else, then this needs to be addressed, and it has to be addressed. There's no shortcut to this. It has to be addressed on the floor of Parliament. One. And the other question which the gentleman asked me about, you know, it was at that time and now it is this time. I want to really believe that the Congress, even at its worst, the emergency was a declared emergency. No one can defend the emergency. To be fair to the Congress, they are also not defending the emergency. There are enough people who've spoken on the floor of Parliament and have not defended the emergency. They said it was a mistake. What is happening today in India? It is an undeclared emergency. Do you know the General Secretary of the Trinamool Congress, Abhishek Banerjee, our political strategy company which we hire, IPAC, their phones are on Pegasus. Tracked during before elections. I mean, today, is it possible for anybody to hold a rally? We had I'm in Goa now. We are fighting elections in Goa. 200 people rally, permission denied. So I don't want to go into this Congress bashing mode. No, the Congress did that. What Modi and Shah are doing, they are shredding the Indian Constitution. They are shredding the Indian Constitution. And I just want to leave with this. I want to leave you with this last thought. And I don't want to make anyone into some doomsday, but that's why the 2024 elections are so important. That's why it's important for everybody to get together in the mind and on the ground and remove this government. Because I can tell you, if I often feel, you know, I have to literally energize myself and charge myself up because of the kind of pressure. I mean, they can't do anything to us because, you know, we have a leader who inspires us to, you know, rise above that. But can you imagine if MPs, I want to leave you with the last point of where our democracy is going. And it's nothing to do with finance. It's nothing to do with, you know, it's a basic decency. Let me leave you with this last thought. Is this an assault on federalism? I think this is a good example as well. So we have the Lok Sabha, the story. We have the Lok Sabha. Yes, you were saying, Anka? Should I conclude?
No, please go ahead. Sorry. I just, please. So,
I just finished in 2 minutes because you must know this. So there is a Lok Sabha, 543, 545. There is a Rajya Sabha. There are two houses. And in the middle, there's a central hall where 800 MPs can sit. It's only used once a year for official business. Balance all days of the year. We sit there, we break bread, we chat, we have coffee. That's like the college canteen, the central hall. You know, and that's where, to me, in my last decade plus years in Parliament, that's where you build relationships. That's where you exchange beyond politics, beyond the flag you're carrying. Can you believe it? Okay, official is Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha in the chamber. Can you believe it? The new Central Vista project, which is India's new parliament, does not have a central hall. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you so much for having me. Good evening.
Sir, thank you. Thank you so much for coming. And we like to see you more often in DPF whenever you have the time.
Anytime. Thank you.